ragtime has its origins in the Midwest just before the turn of the 20th century, and at a time when the African American culture and the European culture and the American culture was beginning to converge in so many different ways. There was a certain liveliness that was happening there. There was a certain rebellion character among youth in terms of the music and the things they were doing. And ragtime started out not as composed music. It was really improvised, and it only became composed over time as these cultures came together and as people started to decide we ought to be writing some of this stuff down. And then over the time that ragtime grew and prospered, we get from the simplest of musical compositions written down to some things that were very sophisticated, with people, of course, like Scott Joplin and some others. From the European culture, ragtime gets its basic form pretty much like the 18th century classical period. There's a simplicity to it, there's a predictability to it. So from that European tradition, we get this sense of balance and symmetry. From the American tradition, we get some wonderful melodies that emerged from local folk songs that were popular at the time. But what really makes ragtime unique and really makes it, in a sense, it's America's own music. It could not have happened anywhere else and at any other time in history, is the amalgamation as well of the African rhythm traditions that came from dances and employed a technique that we call syncopation. When you have something that's syncopated, you take the pulse, the predictable, anticipated pulse of a piece of music, and dislocate it. My left hand is going to be playing a very predictable, repetitive, two-beat pulse. Here's an illustration. I'm going to play a melody for you, and I'm going to take the syncopation out. And then I will syncopate it and add all the other ties and rests and so on that the composer wrote, and this is what it sounds like. And then to add to the complication, I've superimposed that on top of the simplicity and the predictability of my left hand, and this is what comes out. What we had were melodies that might have been popular already, maybe classical tunes, and that piano players would actually improvise on them, rag them up a little bit, jazz them up a little bit, mostly by adding the syncopations. And eventually then you begin to get people who are actually writing these things down and preserving them. The first piece I played for you was the first rag ever published. It's a piece called Mississippi Rag, and it was published in Chicago. It was actually not written for the piano. It was written for a small ragtime orchestra, which at the time might have included a few string players, a tuba player, maybe a banjo player, perhaps a piano, and some sort of percussion instrument, maybe even a wind instrument or two, clarinet, maybe, or trumpet. But over time, people began to actually compose and craft these things. The next piece I'm going to play for you is